Well, welcome everyone. I'm so excited about this conversation. The film is a beautiful, stunning film, one like I've never seen before. And we have the incredible privilege and joy of being in conversation with the brilliant filmmaker, Loira Limbal. And I'm going to start with a brief intro of her, and then we're going to dive right into a conversation about the film, Through the Night. Loida is an Afro-Dominican filmmaker and DJ, extraordinary DJ. If you've never been to one of her parties, you must go. She is an artist of the highest caliber, interested in the creation of art that is nuanced and revelatory for communities of color. She's the Senior Vice President of Programs at Firelight Media. Firelight is committed to making films about pivotal movements and moments in the United States, and its flagship program, the Documentary Lab, is a fellowship that provides mentorship, funding, and industry access to emerging filmmakers of color. So important. And Limbal's current film, Through the Night, is a feature documentary about a 24-hour daycare center. Through the Night was part of the 2019 Sundance Edit and Story Lab and was selected for world premiere at the 2020 Tribeca Film Festival. Her first film, Estilo Hip Hop, was a co-production of ITVS and aired on PBS in 2009. And additionally, she co-produces and helms the popular Brooklyn monthly hashtag A Party Called Rosie Perez. Limbal received a BA in history from Brown University and is a graduate of the Third World Newsreel's film and video production training program. She's a Sundance Institute Fellow and a former Ford Foundation Just Films Rockwood Fellow. She lives in the Bronx with her 2 kids. And welcome, Loida.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You've already met my kids who need no introduction.
It wouldn't be, hello. It wouldn't be a Rona Zoom without the kids.
That's right.
Well, my name is Ai-jen Poo, and I'm the director of the National Domestic Workers Alliance. And we represent the workforce of mostly women and women of color who work inside of our homes, providing caregiving and cleaning services. And it really is the work that makes all other work possible in our economy and in our lives. And it's work that has been really invisible in our culture, in our popular media, and also in our economy, and so undervalued. And one of the things that really struck me about this film and why I think it's just so important is it really gives life and dimension to the incredible lives of women who provide care. And whether they're women who are single moms or women who provide care through daycare centers or in our homes, it is the work that makes everything else possible. And it is work that requires skill and courage and grace and tenacity. And you were able to capture so much of that in your film. So I just wanted to start by saying thank you for that. And if you could maybe just start by sharing a little bit about what inspired you to make this film.
Sure. Thank you for that. This is a real treat to be able to have this conversation with you because of all of the amazing work that you and everyone at the National Domestic Workers Alliance have been doing for years to fight essentially to make this work visible and respected and treated with the sort of the dignity that it deserves. So this is really special. And I'm very happy to be here having this conversation with you. In terms of the inspiration, I actually learned about these tots, the daycare in the film, through an article that I read on an online mothers group that I'm a part of on Facebook years ago. And when the focus of the article was sort of looking at the fact that something like 40% of people in the US are currently working 1.25 jobs to make ends meet, and that many of those jobs and the sectors that are growing the fastest are jobs that require overnight shifts or sort of non-standard hours or schedules that change from day to day or week to week because they're set by algorithms and things like that, right? Algorithms that don't care what, if you have a 3-year-old at home or an 87-year-old at home that you're responsible for. And so that with this trend, the article was sort of posing the question of, well, then who looks after the children? And when I read the article and I read some of the stories that they sort of featured, I was immediately transported to my own childhood because my mother was a home health aide. She raised 4 kids in New York City on a home health aide salary, and she worked the night shift. She worked from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. And as the oldest child of 4, I became my mother's kind of I was the caregiver for my younger siblings. And in that way, I was sort of her partner in trying to juggle and balance and manage our home and our household. And so it just kind of brought me back to like my childhood in this very visceral way. And which I found very moved me and made me revisit memories that I hadn't thought about for some time. And then sort of subsequently made me think about my current life as a mother. I am a single working mother myself, and some of the challenges that I faced and that I continue to face. And then it just sort of made me think about, right, and my friend who's doing this is going through that, and my friend who's doing that, and my titi what's going through it, and my grandmother. And then I was just like, this is like the story of so many working class Black and brown women, but it's so invisible. Like we don't get to see our everyday lives and our everyday stories depicted anywhere. And so then I was like, okay, well, as a filmmaker, I was like, I want to make a film about this. So that's how I sort of came to the idea.
Gosh, and thank gosh you did, because it is an essential part of the story of work in America today and of families and the struggles that so many working class women, in particular women of color, are facing. And I think about it a lot because, in my work, working with women like the ones in your film every day, I think about the fact that we have these weird notions of work in this country in our minds. We either pull up this kind of romanticized notion of work being like the white man in a hard hat who goes to work in a factory or in a construction site and provides for the family. Or we have this kind of fetishized futuristic idea of work, which is like the robots are taking over and artificial intelligence, and we just have to teach our kids to code kind of thing. And neither of them is really rooted in our reality, which is that most people most workers are actually women and disproportionately working in low-wage service jobs. Like our entire economy is driven by services, and 2/3 of all minimum wage workers are women, and they're like the women that are in your film. And that is the story of work in America today. And I'm so glad you were able to shine a light on it. And I'm wondering, even though it was so resonant with your own personal experience, were you surprised by anything as you were telling this story?
I don't know that, I think if anything, I was most surprised by the sort of the amount of kind of calm and love and interdependence at the daycare, not because I wasn't expecting it, but I think I went into filming, sort of assuming that, for example, I would be able to get a shot of a child like dangling on their mother's neck, refusing to let go because they don't want her to leave. They don't want to stay at daycare. And that never came to pass, and I think that was a surprise for me because, I have children and my children went to daycare, and we had our daycare was amazing. We loved it, but there was always, you know, a child that wouldn't like want to let go of their mother or their parent or whoever, you know, their adult was. And I never, you know, sort of saw that. And there was this sort of, I kind of think of it like as a super well choreographed ballet within the daycare, like the kind of the balance and the choreography that Nunu and Patrick and their daughters and everyone who works at the daycare and the children themselves, right? Like that everyone is doing this dance with each other, and everyone's coming in from very different circumstances, you know, with different needs, with different challenges, with different talents and skills, right? And that there's this magic within the daycare. I think that perhaps was the thing that I was most surprised by in, you know, in filming it. You know, in terms of the reality of what people were confronting, I wasn't surprised more. I think I felt more of like affirmation of, and that is actually one of the things that I hope happens for Black and brown women who are working class, who this is their story, that they see themselves and are able to sort of see the film as a mirror through which, you know, their own experiences can be reflected back at them. Because I think there's this way in which the way that capitalism is structured in the United States, it is cruel and grueling, and sort of demands that people work literally to the bone, where, you know, we're at this point where sleep is a luxury that is afforded to only some, right? That in order for you to pay rent and to buy food, you have to work so much that you can't afford to sleep. You know, everyone in the film basically gets like 3 to 4 hours of sleep a night, right? Which, you know, to me amounts to torture, you know, and that is the way that capitalism functions in the United States. That is what is required of the people that do this work that makes all other work possible. And then those are the conditions. But then on top of that, as a society, when you kind of compound that with racism and sexism, there is this sort of guilt and stigma that is then cast upon the working mothers who are in this position. So not only are we like working them to the bone, but then we judge them, you know, for it. And, you know, that emotional violence is something that I know to be a shared experience for, you know, particularly single working mothers of color. And, you know, my hope is that in seeing that, oh, it's really not just me. This is happening to Marisol and to Shanona and to all these other people, that hopefully helps us to understand that the problem is not us, not you, the individual. The problem is structural, is systemic. You know, if there is anywhere to sort of place guilt or shame, it should be on the system, not on the individual, you know?
Yeah, and that's so powerful. It really does come through in a way, and I think everyone who watches it, and you know, we're going to definitely encourage all of our members to watch it at the National Domestic Workers Alliance, because I think they will see their own stories reflected back in such a powerful way, and to know that they are not alone is such an important part of how change starts to happen, right? Both in your own life, but in the systems that are shaping our lives and our world. And one of the things that was so powerful was this choreography that you talked about, the kind of beautifully orchestrated way in which women showed up for each other and their kids, and that even in the context of the film, there was this collective, there was like a care squad, right? Where people really just figured out how to help each other take care of their families and one another. And it's such a powerful way, I think, that women and women of color in our communities have been able to survive
Mhm.
in the context of the brutality of the economy. And
Mhm.
I thought that that came through so beautifully and powerfully, because I think that's a source of strength for us as we think about how we're going to change these systems.
Exactly.
I wonder, in the course of making the film, what kind of obstacles you may have faced along the way in the process.
Mhm. Um, yeah, I just this Kamali is on a break, so you might hear some.
It's
He's playing.
appropriate. It's appropriate.
Yes, it's a Rona Zoom. Um, well, I just wanted to say to your point about the kind of the care squad that I've been thinking a lot about it. You know, like with coronavirus, the term mutual aid has become very popular. But I just think about like our communities are experts at mutual aid and always have been. That's how we have survived in the face of so many different sort of systems, you know, of oppression and so much injustice is that mutual aid piece. So if anything, for me too, it's kind of like, you know, not only does this work need to be valued and respected, but also like I think about the people who take care of us are are actually the leaders who we need to look to for solutions and answers that will benefit everyone, right? So that these are not just the folks that can do the labor, they are also the folks that have the answers that we're all right now so desperately searching for, you know? So that's another piece for me is like about wanting to shift our imagination around who we see as leaders, you
Exactly.
know? Uh, yeah, and then in terms of challenges, I would say my greatest challenges were very personal. They weren't necessarily related to the protagonist of the film or filming itself. They were more along the lines of my own time constraints.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I kind of joke and I say I made the film on my third shift because I have a full-time job and I have two kids. And so I was working nights and weekends and holidays over the course of 4 years to make the film. And, you know, I also, you know, the piece around like the guilt that you internalize, that's true for me as well, right? Like there's always this sort of self-doubt and questioning, like, am I doing everything right? Am I showing up, you know, for the kids or for my job or for the film, right? In the ways that all of these things require. Is there a balance? Is it off? You know, and then sort of, and inevitably it does fall off, and then you feel bad and you feel guilty and you feel ashamed, and, you know, and then you doubt your ability to do all of this at one time. So it was, you know, there was this very kind of internal private dialogue that I was having with myself, which at times was, you know, very debilitating and almost paralyzing, I would say, around whether or not I had any business like trying to pursue making a film at this juncture of my life as a single working mom. So I think that's probably my greatest challenge was that piece.
And in those moments, what pulled you through?
Well, you know, when there were a couple moments that were really tough along the journey, and actually conversations with my children.
Mm,
My children, both of them at different kind of critical junctures, gave me advice that was super helpful. You
mm,
know, the sort of the simplicity of like getting to, well, okay, mom, like what is going on, and what exactly are you feeling, and why are you feeling that? Okay, well, in that case, this is what I think, and they would sort of be super on point, you know. So I would say my children definitely, and then also the exercise, the muscles that I think I have built that I did not have prior to becoming a mother, around having to consistently keep putting one foot in front of the other, even, you know, in the face of really great challenges. You know, like as a parent and as a primary parent, I have certainly faced a lot of obstacles and challenges, and I didn't have the option of kind of like giving up or saying like, okay, I'm tapping out now. Like, you know, this is a role for the rest of my life. And so I had to sort of consistently figure out how to, you know, get up And even if I was not feeling, well, physically or emotionally, keep parenting. And, sometimes that was just about kind of letting go of a lot of preconceived ideas and expectations that I placed on myself, and just saying, like, all I can do right now is put another foot in front of the other, and tomorrow's a new day, And I think I was able to sort of transpose those muscles that I use in parenting, that kind of constant surrender and showing up, and surrender and show up, to the creative process.
That is so beautiful, and why we need more moms as filmmakers. Because the wisdom and the tenacity and the perspective that you bring to your art is one that only you can bring. Yeah. And we're so grateful for it, because I don't think you can tell a story about work in America today without the stories of the women in your film, straight up. And it wouldn't exist if you hadn't pulled through. And so we have to thank your kids for that too. So tell me, what's been the response? Are people as excited as I am?
Yeah, the response has been really great.
Awesome.
One thing that happens sort of automatically is that people will share their own anecdotes, whether it's as when they were a child, or something with their parents or their caregivers, or what they're going through currently, as a mother or a parent, or, a caregiver. The immediate sort of response is people want to share their story, which to me always just feels so precious, because it's, such a gift, people sharing these little intimate tidbits of themselves with you. And again, just kind of feels great to know that that's what's happening, is that people really do see this as a mirror, through which they can see themselves and see the world in a slightly different way. It offers an opportunity for reflection. Yeah, the response has been really, really wonderful.
Amazing.
Give me a few minutes. This is my twin.
Hello.
She can't hear you because I'm on the AirPods.
Okay, no worries. No, I think that's right. I think the idea that it would trigger other people to want to share their stories is the power of the film. And
where does that religion take place?
Excuse me, honey. Seriously, a few more minutes, okay? I'm almost done.
And one of the things it makes me think about is, we think a lot at the National Domestic Workers Alliance about the power of film and storytelling. And one of the reasons why is because we do feel like the dominant story about who we are and what we're experiencing in the world is not reflective. And we have to democratize the story. We have to give real dimension and humanity to the story of who we are and who we can become as a country and as a world. And that's part of what you've done, is you've created a little bit more space in the public imagination for the stories of women of color and caregivers. And that space is now being pried open further and further by all the women who are now inspired to share their own stories. And that momentum is power. Power to change the country and to change the world. And do you have aspirations for how the film can help to propel and catalyze change for working women, for women of color, for caregivers? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. I mean, a lot of what you've said already in some ways answers what my aspirations are. I would say I think about change in two different sort of spheres. One is that sort of personal, on the individual level, if the film can shift something for, a cafeteria worker at a public school right now who's, working on the front lines of this pandemic, or a home health aide who's been riding the subway in New York City, for these past 7 months every day to take care of, the elder that she provides for. that for me, like, it's like I want it to feel like a hug, you know, and like an embrace and a thank you, and then an acknowledgement of like, I see you, you matter, you know, I care about you, and I love you, you know. So on that level, that's sort of one small thing that happens from person to person. And then on a sort of macro level, I do hope that it helps us connect the dots around exactly what is happening and what work is actually essential and who does that work, and what we need, right? Because as we have seen, these are literally the people that do the work that maintains everything under regular times, but now exacerbated under this pandemic. And we have this new language of essential workers now, right? My fear though is that the conversation still is a very kind of numbers conversation, and that sort of nuance, right, and those layers, that dimension that you were referring to, doesn't always make it in to the conversation. And that, you know, this has been the order of things in the United States for a very long time. And so unless we can shift our imagination, the information, the numbers alone will not lead to change, you know. And so
right.
I do hope that the film can be part of the kind of broad shift in public imagination. But even within movement spaces, I hope that we can shift, you know, our own thinking around who the leaders are and who has the lessons for us, you know, who we need to be supporting and listening to and following. Because I think in some ways, in movement spaces, we reproduce some of the dynamics of the larger society around, you know, leadership needing to look a particular set of ways, you know, and Nunu doesn't necessarily always come to mind for someone. But here is a woman who has literally been the social safety net for multiple generations of an entire community.
That's right.
So there is no one who is more expert than her at what is actually needed, what our families and our communities need on a day-to-day basis to live with some sense of safety and dignity, right? And care. And so those are some of, you know, the hopes that I have for the film.
Yeah, it's like Nunu is the hero in her own story, in the story of this community of moms, right? And also drawing the thread from there, she's also a hero and a protagonist in our economy, and should therefore be at the center of our policy, right? Our policy, our solutions, how we think about economic recovery, how we think about what kind of safety net is needed when we rebuild from this horrible crisis that we're in, right? I think that that's so, so critical. And I know as somebody who's been working on advocacy around COVID relief and now starting to think about economic recovery, we've been saying that care is infrastructure, in that it's like roads and bridges and tunnels, is, you know, the things that make our lives possible and our economy possible. What could be more fundamental than the care that is required for families? And we've never invested in it. We've never invested in the Nunus of the world. We've never supported them enough. And yet they are the heroes. And so what would it look like if we turned it around and put her at the center and invested in her and all of the women who've been working to the bone and still can't make ends meet? What if they came first, right?
That's the vision. That's the vision, because they are the heroes, but currently they're also martyrs.
Right.
Right. And that's no longer.
They're collateral. Right.
Yeah. You know, it's the sort of the difference between, are you essential or are you just sacrificial?
Disposable.
Yeah. You know, and so it's like, I think that's the vision. Let's put them at the center.
I love that. All right. So where are the subjects now? How are they? How is Nunu?
Yes. So they are all healthy and safe.
Thank goodness.
Yes. And they are all still very much riding the kind of frontline jagged edge of this crisis that we're in. They have all been working throughout the pandemic. Shannon is a pediatric ER nurse, so she's been, working every day. Marisol works for a supermarket supplier, and so she's been working 6 days a week since everything, began. And Nunu and Patrick never closed. They're one of the few daycares that did not close because they were caring for the children of essential workers. So they're safe, healthy. I also think, though, it would be safe to say that they are tired and scared. There is a lot of there's a lot of need, and there's a lot of scary things, happening to multiple members of the community. And Nuno and Patrick are still playing that role of like, oh, your landlord said that they were going to start eviction proceedings. Well, no, I'm going to call this one, I'm going to call that one and get information for you, because that's not supposed to happen, or families that are facing food insecurity, like they're collecting donations and trying to, plug all the holes. Again, like they are the safety net that, should be provided by our society, but is not. And so they are still, playing that role in a time of such great need. And so I think, I would say they're safe and healthy, but tired and really worn down. It's been hard being on the front lines for this long.
Yeah, as they should be, because that's the role of government. That is not the role of two heroic individuals, as heroic as they are. We should have a government and public policy that keeps us safe and keeps us healthy and allows us to care for our children as we're working. And yes, they are heroes, and we're going to keep fighting in their name and alongside them to create the policies that we deserve. And tell us then how we can continue to elevate the story, their story, this film, and what's next for the film.
Yes. So we are launching an engagement campaign to try to ensure that we can get the film in the hands of movement leaders. So certainly if folks are doing work around any of these issues and want to partner, we would welcome that. Also trying to think through, like, how do we do a kind of like communications strategy that can contribute to the narrative shift work that is, people like you and many others are already doing. So we are looking to sort of position the film as a tool that can be used by the folks that have been leading this work on the ground for so many years. And we will be rolling out the film at festivals. So we're doing, we're going to continue to do virtual screenings, as well as trying to understand like what community screenings could look like in this moment. We had huge hopes for being able to do screenings in communities with caregivers, in person, and obviously that is not possible. But we still hope to get the film to the communities that it's about.
Well, it couldn't be more timely. And we would love to partner with you on that. And there's so many efforts right now to pass an Essential Workers Bill of Rights at the federal level, including childcare and paid leave for essential workers. There's a huge effort among childcare advocates, paid leave advocates, and long-term care advocates to really put stories like the ones that you tell in this film at the forefront of our economic recovery agenda in the first 100 days of the next Congress. So it couldn't be better timed, and this story is essential, just like the people in it. So thank you so much for creating this film and offering it as a tool for change the way that you have.
Oh, thank you, Ai-jen. Yeah, I'm excited for what's to come, and it feels like in a time where there's a dizzying amount of front lines, and battles and struggles. I do feel a sense of kind of I think I'm grateful, you know, to sort of have this clarity of purpose in this moment around really wanting to fight for and protect and extend love and care and affirmation to our caregivers, you know. And so, yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ai-jen.